to another episode of Hawk Off the Press. My name is Madison Hricik. I am the Iowa football beat reporter for the Gazette, and we are continuing our summer Iowa football assistant coaches series. And today we have defensive line coach Kelvin Bell. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Madison. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yes, this is going to be a lot of fun. You and I have been chit-chatting for a little while before we started recording, so I feel like we're off to a good start. But
All right.
today, this is a position group that a lot of people have been talking about, but we're not necessarily going to talk about X's and O's in terms of individual folks just yet. I want to talk a little bit more about coaching and your coaching philosophy overall. You've been a part of this organization since you were a student athlete, and you really invested yourself into what it means to be a Hawkeye, what it takes to succeed at this level. And so I really want to delve into how you've come up with your coaching philosophy. So we'll start with the most basic. We'll start from the ground up. You were a player for this organization. You had an injury that sidelined your ability to be able to play for the Hawkeyes, but with how long you've been around, how early on did you recognize that coaching was a path for you?
That's a really good question. I didn't really realize that coaching was going to be my path, especially not while I was a student athlete. If you would have asked me when I was in college here if I was going to be coaching football when I was 43 years old, the answer would have been absolutely not. It actually started when I got an opportunity to coach at Iowa City Regina High School here in town. Guy by the name of Chuck Evans, who was Joe Evans' uncle, was the head coach over there. My brother had moved here from Mississippi, and I would go up and hang out after school and work out with my brother. And it turned from me working him out one-on-one to by the end of the school year, I ended up with about 17, 18 kids that were working out. And so Chuck was like, love what you're doing. Want you to do it more, but you got to be coaching certified. So he gave me a check to go be coaching certified from Kirkwood Community College, and that's how I got into coaching. But the thing that I did realize was I had no problem showing up to that weight room and working with those kids. Absolutely enjoyed every minute of going up there, watching them, watching their gains, watching them meet their goals. And that's when I started to understand that, coaching is an incredible platform. Money aside, notoriety aside, it's just a platform to be able to reach out and mentor young people. Because those young people listened to every word that I said. They hung on every word that I said, and I appreciated that. And I think that's a huge responsibility. So that's how it got started. That would have been in 2005, maybe 2004, 2005. And that kind of what set me on my coaching path. I was there for 2 years before I took the job at Cornell College.
When you're coaching younger kids, especially when you're at a school like Iowa City, Regina, how quickly did you realize that these kids were hanging on every word? They were soaking in everything you had to say. And do you feel like you still have that feeling of recognizing that these athletes are soaking in what you're trying to tell them?
Yeah, well, how quickly I recognize it would be just the very next day or the next week after interaction when they remembered something that I forgot that I said. So that's when I had to realize that, like, everything you say, these kids they're going to be listening to. So you need to make sure that you're careful with what you say. More importantly, how you say it. And I think even more now, the young people, whether it be high school or the young freshmen that we get here, they're still sponges. They're still soaking up everything that you say, especially if they're trying to improve. I think the kids that improve rapidly are the kids that are the best listeners. They're the ones that are, that carry a pencil and paper, or nowadays cell phone and record. But like, they take notes on what's being said. It's important to them to know how to do things. So they do hang on your every word. I think the kids that are trying to improve, the kids that improve at a faster rate, are the kids that are listening.
How quickly did you realize that you had a coaching style, or do you feel like you're still figuring that out at this point?
Every year you learn a little bit. You learn a little bit more about yourself. And people talk about kids nowadays and how they've changed, and it's not the same. Again, I think there's more distractions now. I think there's more ways to reach kids, and I think that is part of my coaching style. Is I need to continuously learn how to reach today's kids, because they still want to learn. There's just different avenues of doing it. And so, the days of standing up in front of the room and just talking, not having any type of interaction or any type of feedback, I think those days are long gone. But I think for myself, it's just continuing to figure out how to reach these young people, how to impact them, and how can they retain the information that I'm teaching them. Because it's not about what I know. It is definitely not about what I know. I don't play. I don't come off the sideline. So it's how can I get that information to them in a way where they can digest it, where they can retain it, and then they can recall it at the right time.
When you say like finding ways to get them to retain it and recall it and understand it, do you have a way that you prefer to do it? Is there a way that did there other tricks that you've learned throughout your years that have worked? Or I understand that it's very tailored to the individual athlete or the person, but how much of that just comes from the experience of working with so many student athletes?
Yeah, yeah. When you have a room, we got 19 seats in the defensive line room, and so and I stand at the front of that room, and every year there's going to be new butts in those seats. So you need to make sure that you're teaching. I believe coaching is teaching. You need to make sure that your teaching covers all the ways that these young people learn, just the basics in terms of the visual, watching the tape, the auditory of me talking, the kinesthetic of actually going out and doing the walkthrough. I need to make sure that I'm hitting all three of those, regardless of who's sitting there, because kids learn different ways. And then you throw other different wrinkles in there. You talk about the influx of technology. TikTok is a big one. Because these kids, none of them are going to the bathroom without their cell phone. So they learn in these 3 and 4 minute bursts of information. And as long as you can continue to feed those with things that are interesting to them in a way that's interesting to them, then you'll continue to hold their attention. And if you can hold their attention, then you got a chance to really increase the learning. So
Mhm.
whether it be, you know, TikTok videos before we start the meeting to try to sugarcoat a message or send a message in a different way, maybe from a different voice. I'm a big believer in. I learned this from Reese Morgan. I hand out a point of emphasis before every meeting, and that point of emphasis will be some general talk, maybe some current events that may be going on before we digest into how we're going to practice things that we need to improve from the current practice. And then we always end it with food for thought. And it's a quote that I've found, or maybe a video that I've found that I think hits a deeper message, not just a football message, but just a human message of how we need to be and how we need to impact other people.
How do you find those? When it comes to the point of emphasis, food for thoughts, like how do you find? Are you spending like some time in your office digging them up? Do you have a spreadsheet of stuff? Like what do you use?
I do maintain a spreadsheet. But a lot of it's just things that I encounter, whether it's through my time on social media, that I will bookmark. I have a buddy of mine, Tim Triplett, up in the Twin Cities, who sends me a book of quotes at the beginning of the fall, and I think there's a quote for every day, a quote for every day of the year. And I lean on that book heavily. So I just have a mass collection of things, and it's all applicable. Football is just, it's the candy, it's the sugar, but really what we're trying to develop are just better young people, better humans.
Mhm. Mhm. How much of your experience going back to getting certified in coaching, how much of that experience of actually learning what it takes, learning how to become a coach and actually basically sitting in a classroom as a student, how much did that kind of influence where you wanted to go as a coach and what it takes to get a message across athletes?
Well, really, I wish I was a better student. I really do. I got my degree here from the University of Iowa, mathematics and computer science. But I can't tell you that I completely maximized my the. I can't tell you that I completely maximized the I guess the resources that I had here as a student athlete. I'm proud alum of the university, but part of my coaching style is just being transparent about with my players about where I fell short. And I think if you lead with that type of transparency, then the kids will understand that, okay, this guy's made mistakes too, and he's willing to share them with us. And if he's going to share them with us, then I think having that type of vulnerability, that starts trust, that creates trust. So I always try to tell the guys, I know all the tricks I know every trick in the book for slacking off. I've cut every corner that you can possibly imagine. um, and I'm not going to let you do it. I think my job as a coach is just to simply remind you of what it is you said you wanted to do. So I want to make sure that these guys, that they're not afraid to verbalize their goals. They're not afraid to verbalize their dreams. But understand that my job as a coach is here to keep you accountable to what you said you wanted to do.
And for somebody like yourself, you've held recruiting, you've been a massive part of Iowa's recruiting side of football for a while, even once you've held the title as defensive line coach. How much of learning what it's like as a recruiter has also influenced what you want to do as a coach once they actually get onto campus as student athletes?
Well, that's a good question. I think you have to understand. I never wanted to, I got my degree in mathematics and computer science because I never wanted to sell anything. I didn't want to sell. I never wanted to work in retail. I didn't want to sell anybody on anything. And lo and behold, I'm in a sales job. I mean, we can talk about football to the cows come home, the X's and O's, but it's still about being able to connect, acquire, and retain talented young people. And so I think understanding what Iowa is, um, from the standpoint, I always tell kids, I can tell you the good, the bad, the ugly about Iowa City. I can tell you all of that because I've lived it. Been here on staff here for 15 years, but I'm also not a native Iowan. So I can understand the concerns. I can understand the fears. I can answer the questions that people have that are not from Iowa about Iowa. And I think just that transparency in recruiting, um, and that realness and those genuine answers in recruiting can really help stave off a lot of confusion once that young person uh, ultimately chooses Iowa and ends up on campus because you didn't tell them anything that wasn't true. Okay, you led with just complete realness, and so when they get here and they experience, the good, the bad, the ugly of Iowa City, you can always say, "Hey, I told you it was going to be like this," or "I told you this was going to happen." Now let me help you navigate through this. I think that is something that in terms of the recruiting standpoint, that is a huge tool of mine, and I think you can ask anyone in the room, the defensive line room, about how they were recruited here, what they were told. They would say that, yeah, pretty much what falls in line with what coach promised, what coach told me was going to happen, that all fell in line.
And now you've been with this program for a while, and the time frame you have been here probably been some of there have been some of the most prolific changes in college football. I'm thinking the transfer portal and NIL developing, and we were talking about this a little bit beforehand too. But with the recruiting mindset that you've created, how have you had to change that as things like the transfer portal and NIL have entered the picture, and now the age-based eligibility model that begins soon?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think my change has been I just continue to do what I do in terms of just being genuine, just being real. Obviously, with NIL and now with money being a factor, um, if a young man is going to choose your institution because of money, he's going to leave your institution because of money. So I don't want to lead with money. That is not the end goal. What I want to sell is a chance to have a positive football experience, maximize your football abilities, have a chance to earn a degree from a Big Ten institution, and then hopefully learn some life lessons that when you reach a man of a certain age, you'll be able to reach back and help other people. Those are the type of people that I'm going to attract. Like I understand that because if it's about money, they're probably not coming to play defensive line at Iowa. If it's about money, not saying that the money isn't a real factor, but it's not something that I'm going to lead with. It's not something that we're going to lead with. So in terms of like how I've changed it, I haven't really changed my approach. It's just an understanding of 5 years ago, maybe I would hang on a kid a little bit longer. trying to work the angles of recruiting him. But once I understand that it's about dollars and cents, those are something that I'm not going to compete with. I'm not going to try to. There's got to be something more to pull that kid to Iowa other than dollars and cents. Because like I said,
Mhm.
if he comes for money, he will leave for money.
And I think that's something that is kind of being understood across the board with a lot of schools and a lot of different coaches. As all of this has kind of been changing and feels like it changes every day a lot of the times. But um, while we're talking about just understanding this defensive line as a whole,
Mhm.
take me through a meeting, take me through a position group meeting. You mentioned you have the point of emphasis, the food for thought, but when you actually start getting into the X's and O's, where do you see your position group start to hone in? What are they honing in on when you're sitting down with these kids?
That's a good question. So when we start the meeting, um, our meetings are lighthearted. I coach with an open door, and I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that literally. I may be the only coach on staff where my door to my position room is wide open, because I have no problems of anybody hearing what's said in there. And I also tell the players, this is an old Mike Tomlin quote, but there's no hostages in this room, only volunteers. You can get up and leave whenever you want. Um, but we the room is pretty lighthearted. We start out with the point of emphasis, some general current events. I like to give our guys an opportunity to talk. I want to hear what they think about what's going on. I know that when they leave our football building, that they're encountered with things that we as coaches probably don't think they're encountered with. I want to hear about them, because maybe I can help shed some light on or share some experience that I had that would help them through that situation. So when it gets down to the football side of things, we live in a world defensive line wise where we talk about offense plays with 11 people. Well, we're really only concerned about 7 or 8 of those people. We only need to worry about what's in front of us. And so when our guys once we get the defensive call, things that we harp on are, is it a 2-man or is it a 3-man surface? A 3-man surface being a guard, a tackle, and some sort of tight end, whether he's on or off the ball. 2-man surface being a guard or a tackle. Um, is the quarterback in the shotgun, pistol, or is he under center? Where's the location of the running back? These are the things that our guys are focused on, because quite frankly, they don't need to know if it's 3 receivers out there or 2 receivers out there. We're not asking those guys to cover them. So from the standpoint of the game plan, we try to pare it down from the big picture to the small picture of guys. We need to worry about these surfaces, 2 or 3-man or 4-man surfaces, the location of the back, the quarterback, so on and so forth. That's really where, and then that's the start. Even when you bring a young person in, a young high school kid that maybe um, didn't didn't get into that level of detail, just making sure that they get up to speed X and O wise, while also trying to help those young people get up to speed fundamentally. That's the challenge, and
Mhm.
as soon as we can do that, that's when the real learning begins.
Well, that's what I was going to ask this. You kind of touched on it a little bit. How much did almost kind of shrinking the field and kind of honing in on specific targets help with a lot of high schoolers or transfers that are coming in and having to pick up the schematics very quickly?
Well, I, first off, I don't start by shrinking the field. So when our freshmen get here, I throw a lot at them from the standpoint of things that they probably don't need to know. Like we do hit the formations, we do hit the motions, we do hit the bigger picture. But I believe they need to have that foundation before we can drill down to the smaller details of surface and backfield set. So I'm a big believer in, I send the guys to the board. We have big dry erase boards in there, and they go in and we will draw out formations and we will adjust our defense to the cows come home. I have an app, a web app where I can put all their names on a big wheel, and I spin the wheel, and I give them a formation and a defensive call, and I want to know what all 11 guys are doing defensively. That is where we start. And then as they get that foundation, they have a really good foundation of what all 11 guys are doing defensively. Then I think that fortifies what they know in terms of just their world of what are we for doing versus the 6 or 7 guys that we're looking at.
And it makes a lot of sense too, because it helps explain how all of these pieces fit together as well while you guys are actively working towards the common goal.
Yes.
Um,
One thing, I hate to interrupt you here, but like
no.
when we talk about with our young players, and we had two defensive linemen that enrolled early. And both those guys are really good high school football players, state champions. Jack Janda from Michigan and Sawyer Jezierski from Minnesota. Both of the guys are state champions, and they both to a man said, if I knew what I've learned in the past 3 months, if I knew this a year ago, I would have been a totally different player. And they hadn't played a snap here, hadn't even gotten to spring ball. That was just learning the game um, from an X and O standpoint, a film standpoint, a getting on the board and drawing formation standpoint. So the learning curve is steep, and there's still so much that the high school football player does not know.
Mhm.
The hard part is the high school football player does not know that he does not know. He just does not know, you know.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense too. It comes to a point where it's you only know what you know, and
Right.
that's all you have. So that certainly makes sense. Transitioning a little bit more to, I guess, like on-field practices, maybe outside of a classroom.
Hmm.
Um, you guys, at least until September 5th, are going up against your own teammates a lot of
Yes.
times when you're scrimmaging with one another. I'm thinking the offensive line. How much for these younger guys, these transfers, and even some of the veterans who have taken snaps for Iowa, when you're constantly practicing against George Barnett's offensive line that's coming off of winning a Jim Moore Award, how does that help with the learning process as well of getting that real time experience with a veteran starting line?
I think that the time that we get to practice against each other is invaluable. Um, I've had so much respect for our offensive line and Coach Barnett. Just the way that they challenge us week in and week out, practice in and practice out. Spring ball, fall camp. Those are battles because you're going up against the same guys every day. You get a chance to watch film. I think one big thing that for us in terms of going up against them every day, it helps us throughout the week when we're scouting an opponent. Um, and I say that because when you go up against the same guy every day, you start to pick up the tendencies and the nuances and start to notice the little things, the way this guy gets in his stance, where his eyes are, his weight distribution, you start to pick up on those things because you see him every single day. Well, now when you're getting ready for a Northern Illinois or you're getting ready for an Iowa State, those are the things that you start to pick up on other players as you start to watch the tape. Those skills, that game within the game, you pick up those skills during spring ball. You pick up those skills during bowl prep. You pick up those skills during fall camp. So just from the standpoint of just learning tendencies, going against our offensive line is invaluable. And then I'm a big believer in iron sharpening iron. The line of scrimmage is important here in Iowa City. And if for us to be successful, we need to be good on both sides of the ball, offensive line and defensive line. And I think our guys, our players, take a lot of pride in that. They know that
Hmm.
when they go up against our offensive line, and I like to think our offensive line feels the same way, that when they go up against our defensive line, that's going to be the toughest test of the week.
Hmm.
Is those battles on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday during the game week that you have against the intra squad.
Hmm. When
That'll help
you're
prepare you for the fall.
Right, of course. And when you're working with these athletes, anybody who's played any level of college football might know how to find ways to pick up tendencies with their opponents and things like that. But how much of that goes back to maybe a high schooler where, as we were saying, like you only know what you know, and how do
Right.
you coach them to be able to find those tendencies?
That's where film work comes in. Like and not just from myself. I think really the secret sauce in our room are our older guys. Our older guys are awesome with our young guys. Um, the way that the guys are seated in the room strategically, I have young guy, so that a young guy has an older guy over each shoulder because they're sharing the secrets, they're sharing the tactics that they use. And most importantly, our older guys have a clear understanding of where they used to be and how guys that have left help them, catch them up to speed. So it's not so much myself helping the young guys learn those tactics. It's really a group effort, where we show the film, and then the little side conversations between older guy and young guy can really help accelerate the learning, of those young guys. So um, in our, like I said, in our room, the old guys are really the ones who help create the culture, reinforce the culture, and help get the young guys on the right track.
What's it like seeing, like, when you notice there's a side conversation of a younger guy asking, like, maybe it's Kenny, maybe it's Luke. What's it like when you see somebody that's, I say younger, but we can include transfers who are learning this too.
Hmm.
Um, how does it feel as a coach when you catch them asking questions and conversing about what's going on and how to understand this a little bit better?
It makes me feel good because I know we recruited good people. That's what I think about it. I think about um, just the character and the humility of the older guy, to have an understanding that a young guy is struggling, or a young guy wants to know, and then him having being humble enough to help him. And we're all Hawkeyes here. We talk about leaving the jersey in a better place. Not everybody's going to be all Big Ten. Not everybody is going to be an All American or an NFL player, but you can leave your jersey in a better place and help set the standard, raise the standard for the people that are coming behind you. And I think we've done a really good job of that over the past 10 years.
Well, let's take a look at this defensive line just from a whole standpoint. How have you seen this group kind of grow over the last, let's call it 6 months, from the time the transfer portal closed to you guys are in July, so you're not practicing nearly as much as you guys start ramping up for training camp here in the next month.
Well, I think the first thing is to address, the new guys that have come. We talk about Lance Ingold, Kamari Brown, Bryce Stevenson, Emmanuel Olabaju. You have those guys come in, and I think that the way that I gauge that things are going well, is their level of comfortability in the room. I think they've come in. I think our culture is strong. I think our players, Kenny Merriweather, Will Hubert, Luke Gaffney, they would tell me if one of the guys is an outlier. They would tell me, if I brought in someone that isn't here to raise the standard of play in the Iowa defensive line room, or isn't here to reinforce the culture. And I've gotten no negative feedback about any of these guys. They've come in and they've joined the group, and that right there, and lets me know that we're going to have a chance. We're going to have a chance to excel, just because from the standpoint of assimilation and culture, those guys are falling right in line. So I think
Mhm.
that's the most important thing. And then, because the group is so new, with those four new guys, just the way that the older guys have taken to them to try to get them up to speed. I'm so proud of that, because that's going to help the guys that are currently here. Like, you have to understand, yes, these four guys were brought in to compete with you for snaps, but then the way that they've turned and helped them, lets me know that they're in it for the right reasons. It's about
Mhm.
us. Competition aside, they know that we're better together, and
Mhm.
that's been really pleasing to see so far.
Mhm. With how much competition there is in this room, and as you said, like, they're helping each other out and things like that. One of the things that I've noticed throughout Iowa's history is that these players are willing to take their time to do the work leading up to their opportunity. How much are you seeing that come to fruition with some of these players? I think of Epinesa for one, Luke is another one, who have waited their turn and have done the dirty work. I say in air
Yeah.
quotes, but have done the work leading up to a point where they're going to be competing for a spot later this camp.
Well, I think maybe they don't have the game reps. Maybe they haven't done it in front of 70,000 people. But when you talk about Epinesa, you talk about Lou Gaffney. These are guys that have been, ever since they've been on campus, they've been working, and they've been working earnestly, just waiting for their opportunity. And some guys probably think they should have had it sooner than later. Well, now it's time to cash in on that. But I just think the work that they've done, has to count for something. When you talk about, I'm going a bigger, more off topic here, but when you talk about what we've done in the past, Um, you bring back Ethan Hurkett for a 6th year. You bring back Aaron Graves doesn't go to the NFL draft after his junior year. Max Llewellyn comes back, and the amount of guys that we've brought back. Maybe that has stunted the on the field growth of some guys that you haven't seen, but it hasn't stopped the work that they've done in the offseason. It's not like they just started working now for this opportunity. I'm really excited to see what some of these guys do. When the bullets are real, because they've performed admirably in practice situations, and just unfortunately hadn't had a chance to really show it yet on the field. But they're going to get a chance this year, and I'm super excited about that.
I know you and I were talking about some individual names and stuff, but is there a face or somebody that maybe Iowa fans do know that has stood out to you, or maybe ones that are kind of floating under the radar for some Hawkeye fans that you've seen take significant strides over spring ball and summer workouts?
I would say one guy that I think has taken a giant step forward this spring would be Drew Campbell. And Drew is a guy who obviously people know about his brother Jack. Jack consensus All American and Buckus Award winner, and go down the list of awards. But Drew is a kid who probably when he showed up here, um, didn't want to be in that shadow. I think he understood what his brother did, but Drew is on his own path. And after spending 2 years on the scout team, his freshman year on the scout team, and then goes right back down to the scout team his sophomore year, has really started to come into his own through bowl prep and then even through spring practice. So I'm just really pleased with his trajectory right now. It is exciting to watch him grow. He's a kid that I felt like needed some confidence, and that confidence is starting to show. And he's a much different personality wise than his brother. Like he's an absolute. He's a guy in the room that the kids. He's a lot more personable, I should say, and it's a really really good fit for our room. But he's a guy
Mhm.
that has shown up. I tell you another guy who has shown up is Devin Kennedy, and Devin's a guy who his dad was a former All Big Ten player, first round draft pick. Devin's a basketball kid from Brophy Prep in Arizona that did not play a lot of high school football. But thank goodness for his dad for doing it the way he did. His dad drove Devin from Arizona. I think they stopped at a mega camp in St. Louis. Then they drove to Iowa City to camp. They drove to Illinois to camp. They drove to Ohio State to camp. Then they took him to Penn State, dad's alma mater, to camp. I mean, like that's a lot of driving and a lot of camping. But it showed me that one, this kid really wants to do this because there's not a lot of kids that would show up like that. And so Devin has gotten better. He's gotten better every step of the way. He's added the weight. He's got good genetics. Thanks mom and dad for that. But he's a super smart kid, conscientious kid that has really picked up our playbook, and I'm excited to watch him because I think he's got a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see what he does this fall.
Mhm. And when you look at, I mean, we're in July right now, so no one's putting on pads for the time being. It's a lot of weightlifting, it's a lot of training, it's a lot of preparing for what's to come at this point. But what do you tell a lot of these athletes? Many of them have been through summer workouts before. But what do you tell them when you're in the dog days of summer and everybody's itching to start getting to camp? How do you keep them focused on individual goals, so that when they get to camp and they could put the pads on, they're taking steps or have already achieved smaller summer workouts goal?
Well, like I said before, part of coaching for my job is just to remind you of what you said you wanted to do. So I am sometimes subtle, sometimes explicit. I'm a master receipt keeper. I just want to make sure that these guys understand what they signed up for. And then, nothing great has ever been accomplished without great energy and great enthusiasm. So having these guys focus on the how they show up to work, not just showing up to work, but having them focus on how they do it is really going to be the difference between success and failure. And if they show up every day with a positive attitude, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go to work, then that type of energy is going to be infectious across the group. And maybe they're going to, in the worst day, in the doggest of days, they're going to help pull someone else out with their own energy and their own enthusiasm. I think that's where leadership starts. So, um, and I think being present. Um, I want to be down in the weight room. I want to be out there watching them while they run, because when they have those eyes on them, again, I can't remind them of what they said they wanted to do if I'm not actually there to watch them do the work. So I think being present is important too. And the guys that want to do it they will show up. I believe the cream rises to the top, and the habits and the more importantly, the habits, the routines that they create, those things are evident to me. I see them. I see what you're doing. I also see what you're not doing, and I'm here to remind you of both. So
Mhm.
that's I think that's my role in helping them get through those times.
When you say you're a receipt keeper, do you keep like screenshots of text messages ready if you need to? Or is that what you mean by receipt keeper?
I am a keeper of screenshots of text messages. I have every DM that any kid has ever slid into my DMs and said, "Hey, coach, I really want a chance to do this, or I really want." I keep that all, because I want to remind you of what you said you wanted to do.
Mhm. How much of that have you found to be a motivating factor for a lot of these athletes? Is maybe you find something from like 3 years ago, and when they're having a little bit of a slump, and you're like, "Remember when you said this to me?"
Yeah.
How much have you seen that make an impact on somebody?
I don't know that it makes a huge impact, or at least I don't see it. Maybe it's a jolt initially. It's more so, the way that I do it. I do it in a group setting. I think it's important that there.
Oh.
I think it's important that the peers understand too that, hey, not only, hey, Luke, this is what you said you wanted to do, but also coach has the ability to go back and grab these things. So I better make sure that every day that I am, you know, that I am trying, my actions reflect what I said I wanted to do. And if there's ever a change in that, then we need to have a conversation. There's nothing wrong with pivoting. There's absolutely nothing wrong with pivoting. But don't show up every day and just go through the motions, because I'm going to call you out on it.
Mhm. That's interesting. I like that. As
Yeah.
I'm not a massive I'm not great at remembering to keep receipts, but as somebody who's had the tables turn on me, maybe not in that same setting, I can understand where that gives you that little jolt of like, okay, I need to lock back in.
Right.
Um, so as we start turning to training camp here, are you yourself ready to get camp going? Do you feel the itch to get back on the field and get the season started? Or are you trying to be present and enjoy the last few weeks of summer before you start turning the page towards the season?
I am definitely taking advantage of the time off. Um, I'm definitely trying to be more present in terms of, just the time that I have away from the facility, because I do know that when August rolls around, we're going to be 10 toes down. Here we're going to be, up to it. So I want to make sure that I'm taking advantage. But the balance is making sure that I take my time away from the facility, but also be present enough that the players also know that I am consistently watching, consistently evaluating, so that I can make sure that, come fall camp wise, that guys are doing the things that they need to do. In terms of like just getting ready for fall camp, I know it's going to be a grind. I try to get on my bike and click some miles in, make sure that I'm ready. Get out. You may see me in Iowa City walking around with my ruck pack on. I'm trying to make sure that I'm ready for the dog days of summer too that are coming. But yeah, I think in order for my players to be at their best, I think I need to be at my best as well. And part of that is taking the time away from it so that I come back fresh, but also, you know, making sure that I keep moving a little bit too, so that I can, move out there on the field with those guys.
That makes a ton of sense. And then as we kind of look at the season itself, what are you most excited about with this defensive line? Is it the growth that you're looking forward to seeing? Is it the individual goals that you're hoping these athletes will reach? Is it a combination, or is it something completely different that you're hoping that this position group can achieve in 2026?
It's really the growth, with it being, I don't want to call the group young, because it's not young. They're not young, but what they are is unproven. They haven't had a chance like I said, they haven't had a chance to do it in front of the crowds yet. So, but the way that they're working right now, um, leads me to believe that, when the lights come on, when it's time to actually perform, that they're going to be ready to do so. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the continued growth. And remember that without growth, there's going to be setbacks and there's going to be challenges. So we're looking forward to those as well. But it's been a really, really fun group to work with up until this point, because a lot of them don't know what they don't know. We can't go back on tape, at least game tape, and see them and find credit for what they've actually done. We've seen it. We've seen you do it in practice, but now it's real for you. And I want to make sure. I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to answer the bell, answer the call.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question for you, and I'll put you on the spot a little bit here. Since you said you end position meetings with food for thought, do you have a food for thought prompt to end this for?
Oh man, well there's a lot of them. I'm trying to look around right now, see if I got anything. But the one that sticks out is the poet James Baldwin. It's a shirt that I wear. It's a shirt that I wear when I'm walking. You'll see it around. And James Baldwin says, "I can't believe what you say because I see what you do." And that's not really accusatory. My grandma used to say that a kicked dog will always holler. So if you read that and it strikes a nerve with you, then maybe you need to reevaluate what you're doing. And again, it goes back to the players from the standpoint of keeping the receipts and being present, because I'm watching what you do, and what you do is way more important than what you say. Well done is so much better than well said. So I can't believe what you say because I see what you do, and you can take that any way you want.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
Yep.
And say I keep sticky notes of different quotes on my fridge. And they're getting a little overrun with fridge magnets. I say as I look over it right now. But I might have to add that one to it. That's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, James Baldwin was one of my all-time favorites.
There you go. Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining. This has been so fun. I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully you enjoy some days off before we turn the page to August. I can't believe we're already almost there.
It's coming every day, one day closer.
And thank you guys so much for listening. If you like this content, there is a Hawk Off the Press episode every single week. There's also a free newsletter you can sign up for at thegazette.com. The exact same name, Hawk Off the Press. That comes out every Tuesday and Friday at 11 a.m. in your inbox. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you next time.